Welcome back to Man the Helm. Today we're going to start a new series. If you guys are new here, my name is Jake. I'm a guitar player, but I also run a small podcast called Man the Helm. It's streaming everywhere, so go ahead and check it out wherever you consume your podcast. If you don't want to do all that, just go down to the show notes. It'll be right there for you to check out anywhere you would like. But today we're going to start a new series. I think I'm going to call this TQ&A. Very original, right? So pretty much I like to ask some questions on threads, and some of the responses I've gotten have been pretty awesome. So I wanted to kind of take those and consolidate a handful of them and kind of talk about them. So the question that I posed was, what is a guitar truth that you would go back and tell your younger self? Got quite a lot of responses, and there were a handful that really stood out to me. So let's go through some of these and we're going to talk about it. All right, first one we have from JP Wright. Writes, for the love of God, get lighter strings. You know, the thing with light gauge strings, and I love, there was a video that I believe Rick Beato, Rhett Scholl, there's been a lot of people that have done these videos with like what lighter gauge strings does like tonally for your guitar. But especially when you're starting off, like, you know, there's nothing worse than getting that old acoustic or that cheap acoustic or whatever it was, whatever your first guitar was, and the actions, you know, 3 inches off the fretboard and you just cannot do it. I think anything you can do to help get you into the instrument is going to be so beneficial, because the instrument itself, regardless if it's guitar or anything, is so foreign to you at that point. You don't know where to put your hands, you don't know how to hold the instrument. Any little bit that you can do helps. So I definitely agree with the lighter gauge string, especially for a beginner. Next up we have from BP Wingate. Learn how to hold your left hand correctly and use all 4 fingers. So I teach at a local mom and pop shop, and one of the initial exercises I give, which is not a new thing, to give that finger dexterity is that typical Now, the thing that I always preach with this is we're trying to think about using the tips of our fingers, not this big fat meaty part right here, but just the tip. And then what we're trying to do is we're trying to pinch each of those fingers to our thumb. Now, whenever you pinch like that, you know, we can see there's a semicircle that's made if we have the neck right there. So it's going to eliminate all of that like flat, getting that sort of noise whenever you're trying to like play a chord for the first time, or you're trying to use like that meaty part of your finger. I know it's a typical exercise and it's nothing new, but it's so beneficial to kind of think about, you know, that idea of trying to pinch your fingers. And then in the combination with that picking hand, you know, doing that alternate picking to kind of get that finger dexterity going. And it really works out when you start to like try to play chords, you know what I mean? Like if we were to play the infamous F, you know, now we're using the tips of our fingers. We're trying to pinch all of these fingers to our thumb. It always has worked out well for me whenever I thought about it. And students seem to gravitate towards it, and it helps them out a lot to kind of mitigate their hand from, you know, strangling the guitar neck, as it's so to speak. Next we have from Pinotorius. It's actually possible to learn this instrument despite your thick fingers. That is a common excuse that I hear from players, especially beginners, that my hands are too big, my fingers are too fat. It's one of those things, we kind of harp back what we talked about before. It's such a foreign thing to them that they come up with this excuse that they don't realize they're making that excuse because they just don't know. And if you've ever been in that situation, I encourage you, if you ever had that thought process of, oh, my hands are just too big, I can't play. I encourage you to check out people like Johnny Hyland, Kingfish, just to name a few, like just off the top of my head. Those dudes have really thick fingers, and guess what? They can rip. It's one of those things of just, you got to get past that initial hurdle of being that beginner guitar player or whatever the instrument is, and just have it with you to sit and figure out how to function with that instrument. That's all it really comes down to. Don't think about your fingers as a limitation. Think about how you can utilize what you have and do the best that you can with what you have. Next up, we have from Little Bluefish Band. Being a quote-unquote blues player is not a sufficient excuse to neglect the study of music theory. Also, you're holding your pick wrong, or holding the pick wrong, sorry. I feel like that's meant to be a little derogatory maybe towards the blues player, whatever that means. I'm not sure how to really interpret that. It's hard to do that over text as well. But the thing is, at the end of the day, anything that's going to help you on your instrument is going to be beneficial. Whether it's a knowledge-based thing like learning theory, learning how to read music, having an understanding of rhythm, harmony, etc. It's all going to help you in the long run. This idea that we have of, oh, it just won't have feeling anymore, or I'll feel confined, or I'll feel like this. It's like, well, and once again, I feel like that's just kind of an excuse that we make to not put the work in, if that makes sense. And I'm not saying that you have to learn how to do anything. If you want to learn music theory, awesome. If you want to go kind of like a good happy medium and learn the Nashville number system, awesome. If you don't want to learn any music theory and you just want to jam, that's awesome too. But for people that really want to take it seriously and try to do this possibly professionally, anything you can do to help you get better on the instrument is going to be beneficial. The second part about this is the holding the pick thing, which I thought was funny. So as you guys know, I do teach at a local mom and pop shop, and I've seen kids that like come in and it's like that weird, crazy picking hand, like looking ridiculous. And my thing I always tell students, because I've had this question asked to me before, is, well, how do I hold my pick? It's like, well, I can show you how I hold my pick, which is usually something like this. That way I have these available for the chicken, the pickings. And, but the thing is, at the end of the day, when it comes to holding something like a pick, there's no like objective truth to it. Whatever's the most comfortable for the individual is usually the best thing to do. When I say that, like, it's not objective. Like if we were to talk about something very specific, like the major scale, like the intervals of the major scale, like that is an objective truth. Those are the intervals regardless. You cannot say anything about it. Now, but what we can be about subjective is how we utilize that. You know what I mean? If we were to go, okay, or mix up the notes, regardless, that's where it becomes subjective. And I don't think there's anything specific to like holding a pick. You can look up guitar players that have like some of the craziest ways they hold picks, and they're doing pretty well. Next up we have from Elder. Get that fucking metronome and downpick everything. The first part I definitely agree with. The metronome is good for, getting yourself in time and being really, really disciplined about some practice schedule. Like I said, kind of with like more of the music theory side of things, anything you can do on your instrument that is helping you become a better player is beneficial. So metronome, people don't like it because it exposes their flaws most of the time, but it's really beneficial, especially if you're trying to nail like something really, really fast. I've been working on, Free Range Chicken from Andy Wood. Now, I can't play it nearly as fast as the actual record, but that's kind of the thing right now. Like right now I'm trying to be very articulate, and I've been playing to a metronome at about like 110, 115, somewhere in there. I think I got about another 30 BPM to go, unfortunately, on that one. But that's the point, right? I'm trying to build up that muscle memory. I'm trying to get that timing down, the articulation of his pick attacks and stuff like that. So that's where it's really important. As far as the down picking thing goes, down picking's cool. No, no qualms about it whatsoever. Everything though, we don't need to down pick everything. It's a good skill set to have, but it's kind of like I fell into this trap where I was learning a bunch of like semi-legato things for a long time, and then it got to the point where like if I was ever going to improvise over a solo, it was always like this 3-note per string legato-ish sort of thing. Something like that, you know what I mean? Like, hints of legato everywhere, and it got really kind of repetitive and boring whenever I was playing, and trying to improvise, and I was like, man, I feel like I'm stuck in a rut now. Well, what was I doing? I was just always focused on legato. So don't always focus on just one thing, but when you get to that intermediate level where you start to realize, oh man, I'm really, really good at this, and I really enjoy playing this, yeah, lean into that aspect of that technique, but don't make it your only thing. And the last one is from John McCall Music. You do not need to be better than anyone else, just be yourself. And that's one of the things I think a lot of guitar players, and especially that I've seen, because that's most of the media I consume is guitar players. Most of the people I hang out with are guitar players or musicians of some sort. And the trap that we fall into most of the time, and I've been there 100 million times, probably more than that, is we like to compare ourselves to other people. We like to sit and scroll through Instagram or TikTok or whatever you're consuming, and you see some 12-year-old that could just shred your face off, and you're like, well, what am I even doing? You know what I mean? Which is stupid, because that person probably has been practicing a lot. Maybe they have some natural ability, but nothing on the instrument is impossible. It might be extremely challenging, and you might not ever achieve it, but it's not impossible to play what you want to play. That being said, what I've been doing here lately, this is a good piece of advice for people trying to like find their sound, whatever that means, is, I'm standing on the shoulders of giants, of players that I really love, and I'm taking aspects of their playing and then kind of meshing it in with what I want to do. You know what I mean? Like one of my biggest, one of my favorite guitar players at the moment is Andy Wood, and his alternate picking is just on point. And that's really what I've focused on here in the past, probably month or two, is really trying to hone in that alternate picking and thinking about how to play lines and moving between chords the way he does. And it's translated over to the playing. So it's cool to, learn your favorite guys, but you don't want to be that guy at the guitar store that just plays the intro riffs, you know what I mean? You want to be able to take these riffs or these licks and incorporate them into what you want to do. So that's going to wrap it up for today's video. If you want to head over to Threads, it'll be down in the description. You can find me on there, follow me on there, respond to anything stupid that I say with something even more stupid or something incredibly insightful, and you might end up on the next TQ&A. All right, check you guys on the next video.